you know, you figured out how to process things for yourself. A lot of people sitting in that anger and in that sadness and low self-worth and everything. First of all, I want to say to the listeners that I tend to think that all adoptees struggle with this, no matter how they were raised, no matter how open the adoption. It's just a normal, why wasn't I good enough, right? I think that's such a normal question. Why didn't she keep me? So I don't think this is unique to you. I think no matter if a white family adopts a white baby or you look different than your family racially, those issues are universal, I think. Would you tend to agree?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that pattern. There's always a little extra doubt of self-worth in adoptees.
Okay, so what do you want to say to other adoptees who might still be stuck in that headspace?
I would say, I think I did a reel with this. I think I did a little reel with this with Family Adoption Network Connections out in California.
Oh, they're great.
But it was, your worth is going to be where you put your mind and where you put your time and energy. I put my time and energy telling myself I wasn't anything, so that's what I was. Then the switch happened, and I started putting my time and energy and worth into helping others, reaching out to the community, articles, legislative, advocacy. Boom, all these things started falling in line. So now, my worth is in school, friends, family, and so that's the thing is you're going to find your worth where you put your time and energy into things. And so I decided, let's just see let's just see what would happen. Because if you're feeling like you're nothing and you don't feel like you're anything, just for a month, try and put your time and energy into something else. Just for a month, if you, what's the harm? If you already don't think you're enough, well, what's the harm? Just try it for a month, and I guarantee you're probably gonna see those relationships grow stronger. You're gonna see the outcomes in school get better. You're gonna see the outcomes in sports get better. And so I'd really just replace that feeling of, unknown with support and kind of all these different things that could back me up of who I am and see me thrive in these areas. And then that's where at least I found my support. For someone else, it might be theater. Someone else, it might be a club. But just find something that you really want to be into, have it be a passion, and put your time and energy into that, and just see what happens. Because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a good outcome.
Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast, your go-to guide through the beautiful, complex, and transformative journey of adoption. I'm Rebecca Gruenspan, a single mom through adoption consultant for over a decade, author of the Adoption Roadmap book, and your trusted guide. In each episode, we dive into real experiences, expert insights, and the raw, honest truths that you will need to navigate your journey. Whether you're just beginning, in the thick of it, or well past placement, you'll find support and community here to help you navigate this unique path with confidence and love. Adoption isn't all rainbows and butterflies. It is life-changing and worth every bit of effort. Let's learn, grow, and journey together on the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Imagine standing in front of the mirror, seeing a physical scar that tells the story of your very first moments, a mark that reminds you daily of your uncertain beginnings. Born in China and adopted into an American family, Wilson Munsterman grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, with questions about identity, worth, and belonging. But instead of letting those questions define him, Wilson has turned them into a mission to uplift, educate, and advocate for adoptees everywhere. Now a grit scholar, literally for kids who have overcome an obstacle and show grit, at Creighton University, and the author of Marked by Adoption, 10 Key Insights from an Adoptee's Perspective, Wilson is using his voice to spark change, from the pages of his books to the halls of Nebraska's Capitol. Today, he's here to share his story, his insights, and his hope for a more compassionate, adoptee-centered world. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap podcast, Wilson. So glad to have you. I want to set the stage. How old were you when you were adopted? When did you first realize what that meant? And how was adoption talked about in your family growing up?
Yeah, well, first off, I want to say thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I was adopted in China at 10 months. I never realized what it meant really until about middle school or high school years. Growing up in elementary school, I was like every other kid. Didn't want to do laundry, didn't want to do my chores, didn't want to eat my veggies. All I did was want to have fun, eat ice cream, eat junk food. So yeah, elementary school there weren't really any challenges. There were some snippets here and there, but I didn't realize what it actually meant to be adopted. I knew I was adopted because my parents were always very open about it. It was, you would be able to talk to them about it and talk with them about it, like asking, when the guy asks you at the ice cream counter what flavor ice cream you want. It just was that casual. And, so they were always very open about it. And yeah, I mean, it was just like asking any other question. So it was very open in my family.
Okay, that's good. Did you guys talk about it? Did your parents bring it up every so often?
I mean, there wasn't really a need to bring it up. We always knew that we were adopted. Some of those challenges I think adoptees face don't really start until those actual teenage years, preteen years. Growing up, you're just like every other kid. I knew there were challenges that I have to face due to some, interactions with people. But I mean, it was always an open book. And it was a book that I knew that I could open whenever I wanted to. When they had questions, I was an open book for them. And so it just was a thing that, did it really just get discussed? No, but it's because there wasn't really a need for it.
Okay.
It wasn't the priorities of, growing up at 9 years old. I'm more worried about my homework I have to get done so I can go watch cartoons, not because I'm adopted. And yeah, so those questions definitely came later in life though.
Okay, but you felt like it was talked about enough to know that it was okay to talk about, and if you had questions, you could bring it up?
Absolutely. My
Awesome.
parents, since I can remember, it was, you're adopted, we love you. You came from another woman's belly. If you ever want to talk about it, we're here, no matter the time of day. 9 a.m., 10 a.m., all the way to 4 a.m. You need something, you wake us up, we'll be there. And so there's just having that support was always super huge for me. I knew that I had a safe, pillar to go run to if I ever had questions.
Yeah. And I just want to say for listeners, Wilson is a freshman in college. Okay, so you're still like, I don't know if are you a teenager or your early 20s?
I turned 18 in January.
Okay, 18.
No, 19. Sorry, 19 in January.
Okay, so you're still a teenager.
Yes.
And you said, so first of all, it's amazing to have you here because, and I thank you for being so open because it's rare to get a fresh perspective for a lot of parents who are in it right now with their teens. Listeners, you are hearing from the horse's mouth right now. And he's no horse. He's a very handsome guy if you want to go check it out on YouTube. You said, just to embarrass you a little bit, because I am a mom of a teenager, you said that middle and high school were pivotal times when questions about your adoption really started surfacing. So what were some of those early questions, which aren't so early for you, but because that was not too long ago, and how did they shape your understanding of identity and belonging? So what were some of those pivotal times? What were some of those questions that started surfacing for you?
Well, it was as I've quote unquote, deemed it. I followed the path of the whys, the what's, and the unknowns. I wanted to know what happened. Why do I have that, scar on my side? Why was I given up for adoption? More importantly, how did I make it out of China? With everything happening there around the '06 era, I wondered, what in God's grace am I now doing in America with opportunities that I would have never had if I wasn't adopted? So I really wanted to know the unknowns and the whys of my story. And having those questions, it's really easy, and this isn't just an adoptee thing. I've seen this happen with everybody, is that when you get really trapped by those unknowns and those whys and whats, it can lead to a pretty bad place where you just kind of start internalizing those, It's, you want the answers, but you're also kind of scared. Well, what if I do get those answers? So it's either you find yourself being able to live in the unknown, or you get those answers and you have to deal with how those make you feel. And me having those unknowns, I knew from a very young age that the odds of me ever getting those answers were next to none. And so I knew that things weren't going to change. I wasn't going to not wake up to the next day and be not adopted. And so it was really just, how do I kind of make the best out of a poor situation? And realizing that I did have these unknown questions that other kids might not have, and kids who weren't adopted might not be able to relate to. It showed me that the struggle was going to be finding someone to talk to, layered on someone who might not be adopted, but also layered on, do I trust them? Am I, able to comfortably be myself around them with all those? Because it's already super hard in the world to find someone that you trust and want to open up to.
Mm-hmm.
Layer on adoption, and if they can relate to your experience. So I knew the struggles for identity and belonging were going to be very slim, because I knew just from myself, who I was, that belonging was going to be difficult. I kind of stick out. I've been deemed by an old counselor of mine to be the oldest 19-year-old kid she's ever met. I mean, you can see probably in the background, I have a record player. I love old 50s to 70s music. I'm an old soul.
I love your parents already.
Yeah, I mean, my last concert was Andrea Bocelli when he came to Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh my God.
So it's just kind of those factors, and add adoption questions on top of that. I knew that I was going to have a little bit harder time to belong in areas that were easier for other kids. And, finding out really who I was, that was also a big struggle.
What kind of answers did you get?
I found the answers of that. I am me. I'm who I am.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one of you in the world, and that life's too short to live for others. So I'm going to live by myself. It's, if you don't like me listening to Elvis Presley, probably 24 hours, I think I was at the top, like 0.001% on Spotify last year. And if you don't like that, go find someone else to talk to, because I'm not going to give up who I am for somebody else, because then I'm not living for myself. I'm living for them. And so I'm going to be who I am, how I was raised. And at the end of the day, if you don't like it, that's tough, because I'm not going to change. I'm going to be me.
All right. That's something you usually figure out much later in life. How did you come to that? Like, how did you become so confident in you to realize and to really live that way? Because that's not easy to do, let alone to do as a teenager. And I'm sure you're still growing into that in some degree. But how did you come to that? Who supported that? And yeah. Before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. We still have so much to talk about. Hey there, Adoption Roadmap fam. Are you ready to take the next step on your journey to parenthood? If so, head over to our website and take our quiz. It's called, Are You Ready to Adopt? It's not just about testing your knowledge. It's about making sure you're emotionally and practically prepared for the beautiful, complex journey of adoption. Let's make your dream of parenthood a reality. Go to rgadoptionconsulting.com and take the Are You Ready to Adopt quiz today. That's rgadoptionconsulting.com. The quiz is free, and it will let you know where you are in the process and if you're ready to jump into your adoption journey. How did you come to that? Like, how did you become so confident in you to realize and to really live that way? Because that's not easy to do, let alone to do as a teenager. And I'm sure you're still growing into that in some degree. But how did you come to that? Who supported that? And yeah.
It was, I guess I really just kind of realized it one day, is that I kept seeing these areas of where I was supposed to belong. Growing up in elementary school, I knew I was going to stick out. Everyone else for the Halloween parties, they were aliens, stormtroopers, all these like little monsters. I went as Elvis Presley for a couple of years. There's a photo of me as like preschool dressed up as Elvis Presley.
Did people know who you were?
Oh, absolutely. It was great. Well, the kids didn't know, but the mothers thought it was super cool.
Okay, I love it.
And the grandparents that showed up thought it was super, super cool. So, I got my roses, just not from the demographic that I thought I'd get. But no, I realized that I stuck out always at a young age. And I realized that I'm never not going to fit in. It's a lot easier being a sheep than the shepherd. But I'd rather be the shepherd, because I know that with the message I have, I can help change lives.
I'm never not going to fit in.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I want the whole world to just listen to that. you don't fit in because you think you don't fit in. If you walk into a room and you're like, I fit in here, you're going to fit in. And people feel that energy too. And that's really wise beyond your years. Are you an only child?
I am an only child, yes.
Okay. So you, it sounds like my guess is that you really relate to adults.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
I've always found myself being able to get along with the older generation a little bit better, and you can say, I guess, I've picked up a couple of their wisdoms and a couple of
Yeah.
their mannerisms.
It's interesting because it's something that I usually find with only children. Um, However, my son's not like that. He's an only child. He's a boy. He doesn't relate to adults in that way that I usually find only, only children. Um, all right, you shared about standing in front of the mirror, looking at the mark on your side, and feeling like you weren't worth anything. So, first of all, tell us about that mark and when you first kind of noticed it. And what was the first step in rewriting that internal narrative, which we've talked about a little bit, but how did that healing really begin? So let's go to that scar.
Well, it's always been there, and the answers of I still don't fully know what it's going to be, what it is, and I won't ever know, and so it's not going to go away. They think possibilities of it could be from the orphanage, it could be from the birth family. We just don't know, but I know it's there. And so for me, it was that reminder of being adopted will always stay there. And I mentioned earlier that my adoption isn't going to go away. I'm not going to wake up 10 years from now and go, I'm not adopted anymore. It's not something you can just like change about yourself. It's a part of who you are. And so I realized that, well, if this thing's going to be in my life, I'm not going to let it defeat me anymore. When I looked at that younger in my life, I looked at it as of I was given up, wasn't worth enough. If I do anything, it won't matter because my birth parents didn't want me. I attributed my worth to my birth parents.
Mm.
And it was just seeing that kind of brought me down every single day. And then one day, I think I just got sick of it. I just didn't want to be that guy who allowed my adoption to kind of be the reason why I wasn't going to be who I want to be. Because then that's not honoring my parents, it's not honoring my birth parents, it's not honoring adoption altogether. So I now realize that it's going to be there, but how I look up to that scar and look at it, it's up to me. And
Mm.
instead of it being a deflator in my life and it bringing me down, I'm gonna look at the positives that all adoption has given me. It's given me opportunities that I know I wouldn't have. It's given me loving parents. It's given me friends that, I'm gonna be in my friend's wedding soon. It's given me friends like that I take bullets for, that love me. And it's given me so much. It's given me the ability to change lives, to write a book, to help other adoptees not feel and hopefully come out of the darkness sooner than I was able to. So when I now look at that scar in the mirror, it's a symbol of hope. It's kind of like Superman, it's not a symbol of, distress or anything. It's now a symbol of hope, and that really just kind of boosts my day every single time.
It reminds me, I did this. I'm always into self improvement, and I've done a lot of programs over the years. In one particular program I did, it had us take a story that really was defining us in a negative way, right? And I remember mine was around infertility and never being able to be a mother and all of this, but and the exercise was to write down that story and partner with somebody and read that story and the first time to your partner. And the first time you read it, you're usually reading it with tears streaming down your face. And to read it over and over and over and over again until you're bored of it. Until that story no longer has the meaning and the power over you that it did when you first read the story. And it was so powerful. And that's what it reminded me of when you're talking about it. You can make it define you in a negative way, or you can be sick of having it define you in a negative way and choose to look at it as just a thing that is in your life, or maybe in a positive way, right? It just is a part of you, period. It doesn't have to have a meaning, or it can mean something more powerful. And Was there something that defined the moment when you started to rewrite that internal narrative for yourself? Like, did you
Yeah.
have somebody that was a mentor to you, or yeah, what was the defining moment for you?
The defining moment for me was I I'm a pretty shut your mouth, get the work type of guy. I
Mm-hmm.
think that I have a good rule. I have a 5 life rules I have in my phone. It's my background. And rule 4 is it's like an 80-20 split. We go through life having a lot of wants. I want this, I want that. It's okay. Spend 20% of your time wanting it and then spend the 80% making it happen. And so when I saw myself not following that life rule that I had and realizing just going, I want the answers, I want this, or it's because I'm adopted, I do that. When I found that me using my adoption as a not excuse, that might be a really harsh word to say, but as a reason to not better myself, that's when I realized that no, I can't. I have to practice what I preach. And then that was it. I'm gonna now look at this thing a different way.
Okay, you're welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for my guest today. I know that you could pay a lot of money for these life lessons, but today we are bringing it to you for free. A wise man, Wilson. You are a wise man. You backing up a little bit. You talked a little bit about loneliness growing up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not having or looking for somebody to help you process your feeling and to talk with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what about your parents?
It was so, like I said earlier, they did everything right.
Yeah.
They had the open books and stuff, but around those middle school teenagers, you have all that preteen teenage angst. You think you're the first one to ever feel this way, that your parents don't know anything, and that I know I could always go to them, but it was the fact that I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I was, internally, I was kind of scared about, well, what could they think about my questions? Thank God they're both adopted, so they're able to relate, pretty well with me. But I kind of just didn't want to. I felt comfortable going to them, but I also wanted to see what other options in my life I had to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the people that will be there for me, when the hard times happen. That's how I know who I can count on. And so I didn't have a big family growing up. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have like a big, bunch of aunts and uncles I could call up and cousins I could say, hey, I'm feeling pretty down today. I had a few people, but
But like you said,
that's,
you probably wouldn't anyways. I mean,
yeah, no,
these
it
are
was,
adults. These are,
yeah,
yeah.
they're adults. And what it is that my big thing that I've kind of leaned on is my friends.
Mm-hmm.
My whole lesson is I didn't even think I was going to say this at an adoptee conference, but I said, friends are the biggest support in your life
Yeah.
because nobody is friends with anyone they don't like. I don't know too many people who have a bunch of friends that are like, I don't really like these people, but I'm still friends with them.
Good point.
So it's the fact that they choose to be there for you. When your friends reach out and go, hey, are you okay? Hey, you seem down today at school. Hey, is everything all right? They're willing to reach out and do that on their own time. And it was when the fact that every time I'd have these doubts and every time I'd have these worries, I always had people to be there for me and reach out to me. That's what I should have been focusing on the entire time. I was so blinded by the whys and the unknowns. I didn't see the bigger photo that I had people there the whole time, every time I did. And so it was really in those friends that I had that I was able to lean on and cry on and really process my feelings and realize what my adoption meant to me specifically.
Do you remember the first time you opened up to a friend?
I do, absolutely.
Tell me about that.
So it was, people knew I was adopted. It was always kind of like, oh yeah, I'm adopted. I'd give the very surface level of stuff. I knew what people wanted to hear, um, but the first time I really opened up to a friend about kind of what it meant, about how I know I've seen things in my life where it plays parts that I didn't realize it could play. Like I don't really trust easy. I like doing everything on my own. In my mind, it's me against the world. It's me. It's if I want something done right, I'll do it myself. And so, kind of bringing that up, I remember I was talking to her about it in high school, and I was really worried about, like, I don't know what her reaction is going to be. She wasn't adopted herself at all. I was like, is she just going to look at me and go, I can't help you. I don't know what you want me to do. But she met me with compassion. She met me with a hug. She met me with just absolutely just unconditional support. And then it was the fact that I really waited 16, 17 years of my life to not have this with somebody, and I want others to have that, and I hope others do find that and find that friend that they can open up to, and So yeah, that was a huge pivotal moment for me, because I realized that how much support's out there for me and for others. And so yeah, I'll never forget that first kind of opening up an interaction.
Was that just like, how did you feel after that? Was it just a feeling of relief? Or,
Absolutely. It was
yeah.
like a weight. It was like a, it's like Karen, or, it's like when you work out and you're squatting a couple, 225, and you just walk under from the bar, and all of a sudden you feel like you can
I
jump on
don't
the moon.
often do 225, maybe 210. Yeah.
But yeah, it's you kind of do that. You just feel like you can jump all around the moon. You feel
Yeah.
super light. That's what it
Yeah.
was like. And so I just walked around that day just feeling I was on the moon. It was an incredible feeling.
Did you even know that there was stuff you needed to like share or get out before
Yeah.
that moment?
I mean, there was some stuff I knew, like
Yeah.
surface level. I knew that I had doubts, but as I was talking, I guess it just kept flowing.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of sitting back going, holy crap, I said that to somebody. I didn't even know I felt that way. And kind of looking back, you're like, your body knows, your mind knows, whether you want to suppress those feelings or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you feel. And it's just being able to find someone to really get it all out and have that pressure of these feelings be lifted off you. That's the key.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that. I think there's some lessons in here for adoptive parents. Number one, ouch. Like our kids don't want to share everything with us. And it's just,
Teenage angst.
especially when they become a teenager, like we don't know everything, right?
Yeah. Oh,
We know more than you think we do. But
no. Oh,
anyways, here we are. We want our kids to tell us everything and open up to us. And I can't tell you how many times my 13-year-old just says to me, "Forget it, Mom. You don't get it." And I'm like, oh, ouch. Yes, I do, but okay. But so number one, that just is, and that's normal. Number two is, our kids, even if they did open up to us, it's so important to have peers and to first of all build those relationships, right? That's what we do, especially in our teenage years. We build those tight relationships and we start to open up more to friends instead of our parents, and get that sense of one, belonging and support and fitting in and all of that you mentioned. You wouldn't have been ready before that, Wilson. You wouldn't have gotten that same thing earlier in the earlier years, because developmentally, people aren't ready to hear those types of things and to show you compassion and all of that. So you were at that age where you knew, I think I can test this out, because I think this person is ready to hear my story, and I want to share it with somebody other than the people I grew up with. Like, it was probably one of the first times also that you're sharing it with a stranger,
Mm-hmm.
because other people in your life already knew that story, but now you're telling it on your own terms without somebody else's words.
Mm-hmm. It really set the groundwork for how I was going to talk about my story and how I was going to go on about it. And I realized that it's up to me, and so I'm going to tell it from an angle that I want, that puts me in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Then also tries to help others kind of hopefully learn a thing or two. I don't know. I'm not a professional. I just tell my story and I hope it helps other people.
You will be. What do you think it taught you about the kind of support that other adoptees might need?
It's taught me that. So this is a story I think from college that I think people would really like to hear. Is that I had a person come to the dorm, just randomly, didn't even know how we all ended up there. It was one of those nights where we're all end up studying, and hey, let's go back to the dorm. Well, then adoption got brought up, and this particular person was ecstatic. Oh my God, I'm adopted too. And then I just saw kind of the light click in her eyes, and I don't believe she had someone like I did to reach out to. I mean, you would have thought that this was the first time. I think it might have been, I don't know, the first time she had someone to actually talk to.
This
And
was in high school or college? Or
college. This is a couple months
recently.
ago.
Okay.
Very recently, yes. And so what I'm seeing now is that kids who are growing up, and it all just depends on individually households and parents and how they were raised. But I'm seeing that a lot of people, adoption is kind of like the unspoken rule. You don't talk about it too much. Mm-hmm. And so I'm seeing these kids now coming to terms with it. People who have been adopted, in the 2000s, 90s, never have that open space to go and talk about it. So there's a lot of pent up anger, pent up feelings. And so I believe that, you know, I hope that other kids can find, so they don't have to carry that weight and carry that anger with them in their lives. I'd say that for other adoptees, help's out there. That's plain and simple. Help is absolutely out there. You know, it's just taking the jump if you want to really, you know, dive into that. Because I will say you have to be ready to, you know, lay in the bed that you make yourself. And so it's, do you really want to face these feelings? Or do you want to keep using these feelings as a reason to not do things that better yourself? And so, you know, whatever decision works for you, it's your life. But just be ready to lay in the bed that you make yourself. And
Amen.
I've never met anybody who hasn't had seen a life boost after they've talked about it and really found out what their adoption and their feelings meant to them.
Absolutely. And that goes with anything in life, right? Don't hold things inside because you don't realize how many other people are struggling with the exact same thing you're struggling with if only you would share it, and how much you're helping yourself and others. You are so open, and you talk about struggling with self-worth as a young person. Number one, what do you think, where do you think that struggle came from? And I'm asking you this because your parents were very supportive and
Mm-hmm.
open. Why do you feel like you struggled with self-worth?
It was, you see all these stories and in Hollywood and in the newspaper about the parents who give birth naturally, and they look at their child for the first time. You know, the first thing they
Mm-hmm.
have a child do after you give birth is skin to skin contact. This is that instant connection, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about how the first time they looked into their child's eyes, it was the world slowed down. They knew that that was their child, and just on and on about how beautiful it is. And, you know, I hope to experience that someday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was the fact that I kept seeing that, but then I was in my head, I was telling myself, well, why was I giving up? So it was, you know, was there something about me specifically that my birth parents didn't want? Was it
Yeah.
that I wasn't good enough? I attributed that. If I wasn't good enough for my birth parents, would I be good enough for anybody?
Yeah.
And it was in that I didn't feel that I was anything. No matter the support I had, it was just a thing of, well, hell, if I wasn't good enough for them, why am I doing anything today?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was the source of where it came from, of just attributing birth to birth parents, and, you know, wondering why they didn't see what all these other birth parents saw. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what kind of brought me down.
And just one day it shifted for you?
Essentially, it was a mixture of both. I mean, I always kind of sum it up into one day, but it was just a mixture of just, I got sick of it.
Yeah,
You
it's
know
kind of
how,
like what I said. You're sick of
you
telling
just
yourself the story.
you get sick of it, you get bored of it. Um, you know, I knew that I was only 17 at the time, 17 or
Mm-hmm.
18.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a long life ahead of me, and I didn't want to spend the next 60, 70 years of my life telling myself I'm no good. And
Yeah,
so that seemed like a pretty sad life to me. And so I said, okay,
totally.
I'm flipping the narrative, and we're gonna go see. And since I flipped that narrative, everything's just come together. Just everything I've been able to do, it's all just been a blessing.
I love it. Um, you know, you figured out how to process things for yourself. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
sitting in that anger and in that sadness and low self-worth and everything. First of all, I want to say to the listeners that I tend to think that all adoptees struggle with this, no matter how they were raised, no matter how open the adoption. It's just a normal, why wasn't I good enough, right? I think that's such a normal question. Um, why didn't she keep me? So I don't think this is unique to you. I think no matter if a white family adopts a white baby or you look different than your family racially, those issues are universal, I think. Would you tend to agree?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that pattern. There's always a little extra doubt of self worth in adoptees.
Okay, so what do you want to say to other adoptees who might still be stuck in that headspace?
I would say I think I did a reel with this. I think I did a little reel with this with Family Adoption Network Connections out in California.
Oh, they're great.
But it was your worth is going to be where you put your mind and where you put your time and energy. I put my time and energy telling myself I wasn't anything, so that's what I was.
Mm.
Then the switch happened, and I started putting my time and energy and worth into helping others, reaching out to the community, articles, legislative, advocacy. Boom, all these things started falling in line. So now, my worth is in school, friends, family, and so that's the thing is you're gonna find your worth where you put your time and energy into things. And so I decided, let's just see let's just see what would happen, because if you're feeling like you're nothing and you don't feel like you're anything, just for a month, try and put your time and energy into something else, just for a month. If you, what's the harm? If you already don't think you're enough, well, what's the harm? Just try it for a month, and I guarantee you're probably gonna see those relationships go stronger. You're gonna see the outcomes in school get better. You're gonna see the outcomes in sports get better. And so I'd really just replace that feeling of, unknown with support and kind of all these different things that could back me up of who I am and see me thrive in these areas. And then that's where at least I found my support. For someone else, it might be theater. Someone else, it might be a club. But just find something that you really want to be into, have it be a passion, and put your time and energy into that, and just see what happens, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be a good outcome.
Well, I'm starting to see where your passion lies. At least one of
Yeah.
your passions. You can be
Oh,
multi-passionate. You can talk yourself in or out of anything.
mhm.
You can believe anything you want to believe or not believe.
That is absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through so many versions of really getting on board with one side of an issue, but then I learned something else, and then I'm really on side with another side of it, because you can really just talk yourself in or out of anything you want. Let's talk a little bit about transracial adoption. I read that you said that being a transracial adoptee showed you that color doesn't equal culture. Color doesn't equal culture. Can you talk about moments where this disconnect became really clear for you and how you navigated that space between appearance and lived experience? So talk to me about this color doesn't equal culture.
Yeah. So my parents got told by the adoption agency that expose him in his culture. Put him in space where he sees himself. Really, just you want him to. He's going to grow up to be an Asian man. Put him in those spaces.
Which is
And
important. Would you
it's
agree?
absolutely
Okay,
important.
great.
So they did everything right. I remember elementary school, my parents would have Chinese New Year's. So I was always the kid. My mom would bring in a huge thing of fried rice, and we'd, walk around making all this noise. It was super cool. It was super fun. People still, even from college, are like, "Hey, remember when your mom did this in like like kindergarten?" I'm like, "Yes, I do."
Yeah.
So fake firecrackers would go off. It was hilarious. It was it was a really cool time, actually. So they did everything that they put me in these spaces, exposing me to culture. Every day on our gotcha day, when the child gets adopted, we'd always go to a new restaurant and try and, always would look up what's really authentic. So they did an amazing job at, exposing my culture. The big moment where I realized that color doesn't equal culture is that they wanted to kind of take it further. And I believe this was sixth or seventh grade. We went to a Chinese learning center church in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was a very big staple for the Chinese communities to go here. And so my parents, well, we want him to see other kids who look like him, and we want him to see what is culture. So I went to these places. They got told that I would fit in. I got told that I would find a sense of instant connection of when you walk in here and you see everyone who looks like you, boom, you're gonna feel at home. Well, I did, and that wasn't my experience. It was because, yes, I might have looked like them, but I didn't know how to speak Mandarin. I didn't know that, I didn't know that you're supposed to have certain mannerisms at the table. I didn't know that, we didn't celebrate every single Chinese holiday. There's just a bunch of them. We celebrated the big ones, but we didn't celebrate them. And that's no fault of my parents. I couldn't tell you every single holiday. But it was the fact that I might have looked at them, but because I wasn't raised in that culture, I couldn't relate to them. And so where I was supposed to be an insider and have that in-group kind of feeling, I was an outsider to them. And so from after leaving that, I realized that, color doesn't equal culture. Just because I look a certain way doesn't mean I'm going to have that culture, because I know that there are thousands, hundreds of other thousands of adoptees in my same spot. And so that's when I really, like I said earlier, I'm going to live by myself. I'm going to live doing the things I like. I'm going to live watching the old country westerns. I'm going to live watching, my parents and I still watch reruns of the Carol Burnett show. It's going to be stuff like that. And I know that brings me joy, and I don't really care what anybody else thinks. And that's what I'm going to do. And that nothing, that's what it is. And the big thing I really want to bring attention to this is that it's very important, like you said, that parents really become mindful of, if they do adopt transracially, what their child's going to go through. Really exposing them to the culture. My thing is, and I'm very understanding of both angles of a viewpoint. I really like that I can disconnect and see things from both angles. Is that I don't think people realize how hard that is. And I know how I was raised. If I go adopt a child from, let's say, the Netherlands, from Greenland to England to South Africa to India, and I have this child, and they say, okay, now I want you to expose this child to their culture and what they're up to. One, I'm going to be not even know where to start. I couldn't raise a child in any culture that I was raised in myself. Plus, it's that there's no, how am I going to do this? Parenting is already hard enough. Now I have to, not that it's an extra layer, but it's, okay, well, where do I start? Do I reach out to who do I even reach out to? Because I can have the greatest intentions, but unless I know the roadmap to how to get that child the care that they need, I won't know where to start. And so I think it's just having the understanding for everybody is that, adoptive parents pretty much come from a place of love and support, and that it's hard to raise another kid in another culture, and they don't mean to do it. If you see shortcomings, it's not, 9 times out of 10, it's not out of anything malicious. It's out of just, it's hard. It's very hard, because I know I couldn't do it if raising a child out of a culture of my own.
Do you wish you would have been immersed in the Chinese culture?
No, I really don't. I mean, we had the Chinese New Year. We had everything growing up. We'd celebrate Lunar New Year. We'd have all the holidays. My mom got, she was the head for a while of some Chinese adoptees group that we'd always hang out with every month or so, where it was a bunch of kids adopted from China. And so she did everything correctly. Yeah. I want to make that clear. Everything correctly. But I mean, I don't really wish I was raised,
that you knew more about what you were talking about. Go ahead.
Then I wouldn't be me. Sorry. I wouldn't be me if I knew that. And so, and I'm happy with who I am. And so I'd rather just stay that way.
For sure. Absolutely. Also, I was thinking, nowadays, in the generation that we are in now, in the world that we live in now, so many people of different ethnicities and cultures than our own are just raised American, right? Mm-hmm. So there are lots of people who look like you now, who are born from other Chinese families, but that still don't know the culture because they were raised in America, where their parents were raised in China, and they just don't do the things that, they used to do, or the kids might not care as much. So they're like, I'm not going to Chinese school or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or know the language, right? There's so many people who are born to their own culture, but don't know the language because they spoke, English in their house. So I think we're starting to see that a little bit more than we ever used to. And I'm going to guess that we're going to see that even more, that we live in this melting pot that not everybody knows. You can't assume that everybody kind of just knows the same thing because of the way they look.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in my mind, I don't ever judge somebody off looks, mm-hmm. color, creed, race, religion, orientation. I judge you on who you are. I judge you on if you're a good person. I judge you on your personality. I judge people by people. If you say who you are and you follow through and you come from a good place of heart, I'll pick up on that and I'll know that. And so that's how I judge people, as individuals, not as a community.
What was the turning point for you when you decided to start speaking out and becoming this powerful advocate for adoptees? What do you think helped you find your voice?
I guess it would be I saw the need for it. I saw that, how hard it was for me to get to that place, and that I knew that there were others who hadn't got to that place. So I saw the need and wanted to really help them out. And then I guess all the mentors in my life were all products of people who've interacted with, and all the mentors. And so just having those mentors in my life, absolutely. And I'll probably talk about one later when we bring up another question. She's just an absolute, just amazing person. But yeah, so getting involved just came from a place of I saw the need, and I knew that I had maybe not all the answers, but I knew I had to start. And it just was that at that age, I was going to try and help out by reaching out to the community, by, speaking out. Because I knew that it's that whole like fear of when your teacher says, or, your boss says, if you have any questions, raise your hand, because I guarantee you somebody else has the same question. And I said, from that day on, I'm going to be the one who raises my hand and asks the question, because I know that I can help other people, whether they want to voice it or not.
I love that. Did you see it on social media, the need, or I know it had to have been for more than just that one interaction you talked about recently, but what do you mean you saw the need? Or was it just in yourself? Before we go on, I'm going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We have so much more to cover. Shopping for the right hair and skincare products can be tough, especially for multicultural or transracial families. That's exactly why Kate Shanahan created Sweet Peachtree Marketplace. When Kate and her husband adopted their daughter, she realized that caring for her melanin-rich skin and beautiful curls was essential to raising a confident girl. And as a cancer survivor herself, chemical-free ingredients were a must. She wanted one place with safe, natural products for her whole family, plus education and resources for families like hers. Now you can find it all at Sweet Peachtree Marketplace. Just visit sweetpeachtree.com, and because you're a listener of the Adoption Roadmap podcast, if you use code ROADMAP10, you'll get 10% off your first order. sweetpeachtree.com with the code ROADMAP10 for 10% off your first order. Sweet Peachtree, celebrating every curl, every shade, every family. Did you see it on social media, the need, or I know it had to have been for more than just that one interaction you talked about recently, but what do you mean you saw the need? Or was it just in yourself?
I saw the need in myself.
Yeah.
I knew that there were 8 billion people on the planet, and a bunch of them are adopted. And that even I think the lessons I speak to about self-worth can even be applied to outside adoption. So just seeing the need in myself, seeing the need just locally in my community, when I'd reach out and say, hey, is he okay? Like, and then I get some feedback of, well, they're adopted, and she's just having some struggles with here. And then I'm like, okay, after about 4th or 5th family that I was helping out, I'm like, yeah, this is going to have to go to a bigger level, because, I only have so much time in the world. I probably can't. I'd love to be, if I could meet with every family personally and help them out, I would, but time's limited. And so I said, you know what, we're going to now get involved in social media. And yeah, that was the best way I could reach as many people as I can.
Well, you figured it out, even so much so that you testified at the Nebraska Capitol. First of all, I want to hear how that came to be, but you shared with in the legislature, whatever, in government, what you wish had existed when you were growing up. So first of all, before I ask you any other questions about that, how did that come to be?
Well, I had a mentor I had. Her name's Shannon Bingham, and she's just a knockout superstar. I mean, co-owner of her own salon, beauty pageant winner, philanthropist, just adoptive mother, just all around.
Is she from Oklahoma?
Amazing person. She's from Omaha.
Omaha. Mm-hmm. I think I heard her speak.
She's from Nebraska.
Yeah, I think I heard her speak
She
at
probably is. She speaks all around. She's
at a
just a knockout
conference.
superstar.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember I was at work, and this was senior year of high school. I'm at work, and I just get a text from her. I'm like, "Hey, I have an opportunity. I want you to come speak at the Capitol for a resolution that examines the lack of support for adoption and foster care kids." I thought she was kind of playing around. No, she was actually serious. And so it just kind of led from that. I'm just like, oh, okay, this is big time now. This is legit.
Yeah.
And so it was in that process of trying to write about it. Tried to be, tried to sound like a politician. I tried to sound high, really big words that I didn't know, and it was to the point where it was like, okay, can I say this like this? Nah, I'm just gonna like work my way around it. And I realized that I was trying to sound like someone I wasn't, and they wanted me, and so I was just gonna sound like me. And I talked about just the resources I had. I examined the good, obviously gave praise to the good, but then just because something's good doesn't mean it can't be improved. And so I talked about the improvements I wanted, and I wanted, before families get told what to do, but not kind of the how or why to do it. So it's, if we can implement, not anything mandatory, because I don't believe mandatory is the right way. It's your child, you're going to raise it how you want to, and I believe that's what it is, what it should be. But I do things that we should strongly suggest families to have this kind of extra support, because there will be things that people have to deal with in adoption. They might not know that. Like when I had a kid come up to me and say that, oh, those are your fake parents. When I had these doubts about self-worth, when I had people go, how the hell are you guys related? What are you going to do in those moments? Because I don't think those get brought to light. And so it's just having those kind of resources where kind of like support groups almost, there's support groups for kids who have, hearing loss, eyesight loss, hand deformity, ADD, ADHD. I want adoption to be in those groups now, where it's boom, you have the go-to resources to not only, talk about the hard times and have those questions in a safe space, but also celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
And so that's really what I talked about, and it's how I said I wanted there to be some sort of organization out there to kind of be the go-to adoption support place. And so yeah, that was really cool.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, Wilson, because as we speak, I run an adoption consulting group called RG Adoption Consulting, and work with hopeful adoptive parents. And we have been seeing this huge need lately of families who come back into our community asking all these questions about things that they're struggling with. So I am about to launch the Adoption Continuum membership community for adoptive parents, where we will have experts in there helping them through some of these adoption related issues that are coming up in their lives as they parent their children in different developmental groups. So we are forming that as you speak. So if anybody's listening who's like, wait, I want to know about this, then reach out to me on Instagram or whatever at RG Adoption Consulting. So that is happening and in the works, and I'm so glad that you are trying to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an important need. So what are some of those things that you wish existed when you were growing up? What are some of those things that you shared?
Like I said, the support for me, I hope there's like support groups for kids, whether they're in church camps, school camps, third party camps. I want kids to be able to find people that they can talk to about this stuff.
Yeah.
But not only that, is I think that when we kind of think about adoption, we think about the child, right? We think about the child perspective. Well, in my book I actually talk about, well, adoption's parenting. The question isn't, are you ready to adopt? It's, are you ready to be a parent? And so I want more resources for my parents. I wish they had more resources. Mm-hmm. Parenting isn't easy. There's no book for how to parent.
Says especially there's no book. Yes.
Yeah, there's no book how to be a parent, especially for your child, because he's different. They're different. And so I want the how and why. Mm-hmm. I mentioned that. It's, if I tell you to go build a shed, okay, but if I don't tell you why you should build a shed or how to build a shed, you're not going to probably follow through on that too much. And you're going to wonder, well, what the hell, or why do you say that? So I want the find your child resources, learn about what they could go through, learn about how to respond. Okay, that's the what. But how, go to here. And the why, because your child might go through things. And I always emphasize might, could, maybe, could, possibly happen, because every child's individualized. I'm not saying what happened for me will happen for everyone, and what happens for Sally might not happen for Billy. It's all just be ready and be, in case they do, I want you to be prepared. And so there's this support for the whole situation all around, even financial needs. Adoption isn't cheap. Um, so if we can kind of find out how to reallocate resources to helping, grants, how to help people make the adoption a little bit cheaper, hopefully, and then also just, again, that's just the support for the parents. I believe that's a huge thing that gets left out, and I'm a big advocate for it. I think parents need as much help. It takes a village to raise a child, and if we can provide them with a village, an even bigger village than they already have, I believe that child's future is going to be 10 times better than what it already probably is.
I love that. And we did some episodes recently with some fantastic grant organizations, which we'll link to as well. All right. You have an opportunity to design a national blueprint for adoption support. What are some of those what, hows, and how-tos that are non-negotiable for you that you would include in there?
Non-negotiables. Well, I don't think that there'd be any non-negotiables. I don't think there'd be a have to for anything. That's not just who I am. I believe that the greatest thing, about this country essentially is you can do what you want. You have a kid, it's your kid, no matter how it got there. You parent it. My favorite joke to say when I'm speaking is, no matter how your child got to your home, it's your home. So if they ever act out of line or, say something snarky, don't be afraid to whip their butt. You got every right to it. And that comes from someone who is 19. So if they have anything to say about it, you can tell them directly DM me, because that's their job.
Just hope they don't turn you in.
Yeah, no. By whip their butt, I like to make clear timeouts and stern talking too. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. But are there certain areas that you feel like, you said, I wish my parents had more support when I was growing up. Are there certain areas of support that you're like, they needed help with this? Like, I want to make sure every family knows how to, I don't know. What is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, I want to talk about how people just need the support, like Identity. They're a great parenting company, adoption resource company by founders, by Isaac Eder.
Yes.
I met him at an Adoptee conference where he hosted it, and so that was pretty cool. But just companies like that, I want them to start up, and I really want a big five to cover each region, to come together. And so if you're from the Midwest, boom, here's your guy. You go to them, and I want them to have resources and everything. And I just want a place where people can go to talk about it.
Love it.
Maybe not modeling after AA. That's the first idea that I have in my mind. But maybe like an adoption support group that you can go to maybe once a month. Talk about concerns, get insights from the parents. Just have that community to realize that, as much as we talk about the child feeling alone, parents probably feel alone too.
Yeah.
When you're an adoptive parent, you probably have a bunch of other kids, other friends that are parents, but are they adopted too? Will you be able to talk about, well, Billy today came home and asked me why we have different skin colors. Can any one of will you have friends that can relate to that? And so I just want parents to realize that they're not alone, that helps out there. And again, same thing with adoptees. That'd be my only thing for a national blueprint, is just have these sources available, not mandated, but available and strongly suggested.
And I love that, because what you just brought up, because sometimes, somebody said to me recently, you say to talk to the child at the age appropriate level and tell them they're short. I need the words. Can you give me the words? And so that's some of the stuff that we're going to be doing in our community as well. Building exactly what you're hoping for. And I don't know that there are too many out there yet, where we have adoption professionals in there for different stages of growth and different therapists to answer the questions, but not only the professionals, but having each other's lived experience to share and support each other is super important.
Yeah, I brought up Identity.
Tell us about
Sorry,
Identity.
I brought up Identity, and they do that great. Isaac is just an amazing human being.
Yes, he is.
I saw him speak, and he has essentially. That's why we got connected. So it was because I saw the shared interest. He has a roadmap already in a couple of books that he sells, free resource guides. He has a community called in Thrive. When you become an Identity partner, you can. It's essentially like, as I call it, adoption Twitter. I don't know if that's a good word for it
Okay.
or not, but you can make posts, talk about the good, talk about the bad. It's just a safe space for community. So I think if we can just get a bunch of other people to do that and
Yeah.
just find the ones that have really laid the foundation and groundwork, if we can just have them kind of step up and, not that they're already not stepping up, but kind of just be elevated to go to this is where you go. I
Yeah.
think that'd be incredible, just getting as much help and resources as you can.
Yep.
That's
We
the
love
key.
Isaac Etter and we'll link to his stuff as well. You wrote a book called Marked by Adoption.
I did, yes,
That's
yes.
amazing.
Thank you.
Um, it's a blend of personal storytelling and deeper insight. I have not read it yet, but who did you write this book for?
I wrote it for, and I put this in the dedication in the first page, I think, actually. I wrote it for three people, or three groups of people. One is the public. You know, people not, all adoption talk is education. It's do you know kind of what to say in these scenarios? You know what not to say. And 9 times out of 10, it's not malicious. When I had some fourth grade girl come up to me or whoever say, are those your fake parents? There was no malicious intent. They just didn't know how to talk about it.
Mm.
That's like if were to go down to a racetrack, right? Or if I were going to go down to be a bunch of plumbers, plumber talk, like, talking about toilets or whatever. If I say something that you're not supposed to, well, that's not me being malicious. That's just, I don't know how to speak in that area. So it was for the public for education. I took 10 very big general topics that I felt that I could speak essentially for the adoption community on, that I've seen all across the nation, all across, everywhere essentially have these 10 feelings of support, identity challenges, culture challenges. And so I really grasped those 10 and wanted to educate the public about what those are. I wrote it for parents, not only adoptive parents, but prospective parents. This is how your child might be feeling. It might give you an insight to how their mind is working and how they could be feeling, and, I've heard stories where kids are just kind of going, I can't talk about it. I'm not going to tell you, but just read the book. You'll find out. And so it's that essentially of that hand it quietly, look away so you don't have to see the parent, but you still get your message across. So that's kind of why I wrote that. And then I wrote it for the adoptees. I want out for other people to be seen, whether you're a child or not, or you're 16, you're adopted. I want you to realize that you're heard and valued now. We're on a new wave of adoption support. So I wrote this for them and showing them that there is going to be a change. And I hope to, be at the forefront and lead that some way, somehow.
Thank you for writing it. Everybody wants to feel seen and heard and know what they could be doing better. And there's nobody better to hear it from than you. You are right there. You are who we are raising. And while Wilson is one voice, there's a lot of commonalities here. And we need to listen to as much and learn from each other as much as we can. Emotionally, what was the hardest part of writing the book for you?
It was, like I said earlier about how, like, you start talking, you don't realize that you have the feelings that you do. It was kind of like that for this book. I'd write something, then I'd like stop, I'd get in that mode, and I'd look back and be like, oh my God, that just came out of my hands. I typed that. What the heck? So it was kind of just seeing what I wanted to all get out there. But it was also seeing what I didn't want to get out there. I'd go probably too far into a chapter and realize, that's a little personal. I don't want to talk about that. Delete 2 hours of hard work, feel bad, then have to retype it again. And so it was just the emotional part of what I felt comfortable with putting out there and what I felt comfortable with not putting out there. So it was just mapping those challenges were probably the most emotional.
Did you learn anything about yourself, or did something
Yeah,
surprise you?
I learned that, I always have been the put your head down, get to work type of guy, but I learned now that had the idea in summer last year when I was out of high school, and now it's a thing, under a year later. So I realized that I can do whatever I put my mind to, and that's a
Amen.
great foundation to have. And that's what I really learned about myself, is that I knew it before, but now I can't ever go back on it, because I can say I wrote a book. I can't backtrack now, and so it's how do I then elevate from now and get better.
I love that. There are 10 insights in your book.
There it is.
Excuse me. Is there one that hits closest to home for you?
Yeah, probably chapter 4. It's I believe it's the title, Adoptees Face Unique Identity Challenges. And that's something that I think that all adoptees can realize, is that your story is a little bit different. It's valid, it's different, but there are going to be challenges that you have. Where's your worth? Where do you find it? And it's just, that's, I think, probably one of the biggest three things I want the public to know is that there are more challenges with adoption than people might realize.
Are you willing to read a part of that chapter?
Yeah, I can. Here,
awesome.
I actually have a book, so let me try and get to that.
Show it to us first of all. If
oh
anyone's looking,
this
on
is
YouTube,
the book, by the way.
Okay.
Got my photo. It's professional on the back. Yeah, it's on Amazon, $14.99. So yeah, chapter 4. Adoptees face unique identity challenges, and it goes, one of the deepest struggles adoptees often experience, and one that isn't always visible, is navigating the complexity of identity formation. Identity is something every person wrestles through with as they grow, but for adoptees, the questions of who am I can carry additional layers of confusion, uncertainty, and emotional tension. It's not simply about knowing one's name, family history, or where one lives. For adoptees, identity also includes navigating dualities, belonging in a family while simultaneously feeling a sense of loss about one's origins, connecting with cultural heritage, while adapting to new traditions and grappling with complicated feelings about self-worth and belonging. They're not superficial struggles. Their emotional reality is deeply embedded in the adoptee's daily experience. And that's just a little first page I wrote.
Yeah, thank you. And you'll have to, where can people, on Amazon, you said?
Yep, Amazon, $14.99 for paperback, and then for hardcover, it's $24.99.
Awesome. And tell us the name again.
It's Marked by Adoption, and then it's 10 key insights from the adoptee's perspective.
By Wilson Munsterman.
Mm-hmm.
Did I say that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing a piece of that. I love it. And I know identity is it's such a huge piece of adoption. And if parents don't, aren't willing to really dig into that piece and what that means for their child, then you shouldn't be adopting, because that is a humongous piece of anybody's life. But for an adoptee, there's an extra layer that's really important and essential. Mm-hmm. You've once said, we're more than where we come from. We are what we do with the life we're given, which we've talked a little bit about today. We're more than where we come from. We are what we do with the life we're given. With that in mind, what do you hope that listeners today will take away, not just about adoption, but about what it means to be seen, supported, and human?
Well, when I said that, I was thinking of a quote from my college, and it's by St. Ignatius of Loyola, and it's "Go Set the World on Fire." And it's about taking what you've learned, taking what you know, and going out and helping others, essentially setting the world on fire with your passion, your knowledge, and what you can do for others. And so I believe that's why we're here. That's why God put me here. I know my story. I know I shouldn't be here. And that's something I've come to terms with. I know I probably shouldn't be able to wake up, have the opportunities I do. And so it's a discredit to myself, my family, and everyone around me if I don't go out every day and try to leave the world a better place than when it came from. And I think that's the main course of, what we can do. In today's world, it's hostile. I'm going to say that right now. It's hostile. But I believe that if we can just take a step back, realize that people have reasons for why they think a certain way. Whether it's from influence, it's always either from influences, experiences, and personal knowledge. And so if we can kind of step back, realize more the why they think that way instead of what they think, then I think we can all have a more compassionate world. And everyone I know, it's like that. I don't know if they had these in school, but it's, that marble track where you all put the marbles at the top and it takes different ways, but it all ends up at the same place. There's a loop-de-loop that's straight down. I feel like that's what we are in life. We're all trying to end up with the same goal, with a loving family, grandchildren, successful. We just have different ways to get there. And I think if we can understand that we all have different ways and that no way is the right way, they're all different and everyone's valid in their own way. I think it's kind of really understanding that is that we can then move to a more compassionate world. Not only will we be seen, we'll be seeing others for who they are, and that we're all human. If we tend to hold others to almost a godlike status, if that makes sense. Like they, others should not mess up. But when we're in the same shoes, we kind of, give us a little leeway. And since if we can look at ourselves the way we look at others, look at others the way we look at ourselves, and put others first before us, I think the world would be a much better place.
Amen. Everybody has insecurities in this world, no matter how you see them. But know your self-worth. Know that you belong in the room. Raise your hands. Be that one to raise your hand and share the answers. Share your wisdom. Wilson, you gave us so many golden nuggets here today. I really appreciate you being on and sharing your story. Go out and buy his book. Watch him on YouTube. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do not have a YouTube. Okay. I just have an Instagram and a Facebook.
Or an Instagram. So okay, what's your Instagram?
It's just Wilson, Wilson, and then the first 4 letters of my last name, Muns.
All right, go follow him. Wilson, before I let you go, though, I have a quick fire round for you.
I'm ready.
All right. Give a shout out to one person or organization that has influenced your adoption journey or the work you're doing in adoption.
Shanna Bingham. She's my mentor. She's the reason why I'm doing everything I'm doing. Everything I do is a product of hers. She sets an incredible example for not only me to follow, but for the world to follow. She elevates herself. Everyone can elevate themselves. That's a very easy thing to do, is to elevate yourself. But as she's doing it, she's also bringing others along with her. And so I've tried to follow that steps. Now I'm out of high school, so now it's okay. I'm trying to find, juniors and seniors who hopefully can carry on the message and help them understand why and what I'm doing. And so Shannon Bingham is my absolute shout out. She's just a knockout superstar, incredible person. And
all right, everything. Shannon, I'm inviting you on the podcast. Come on.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I highly suggest you. I'll send you her Instagram. She just is an incredible person. And I can sit here for probably as long as we've been recording and singing her praises.
I love it. I've been following her too. What's one piece of advice that you would like to share with adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive parents?
I'll say that know you're going to make mistakes. It's a lot easier to talk about the good stuff and what you're going to look forward to, but know you're going to make mistakes. Parenting isn't easy. Every parent makes mistakes. Every child makes mistakes. And it's not all about having the right answers. Having all this adoption support, it's very new. So older adoptees might not have had it, but it's very new, and you could learn everything about it. You could learn everything that you need to know and everything you think you could be prepared for. Your child will hand you something that you were not prepared for. I guarantee that. And it's just, know that it's not about always being right. It's not about having the answers. It's about creating an environment where your child feels comfortable, safe, loved, supported, and understand that when you do make mistakes, it's not going to change anything, because you're going to be able to have that background and have that already, made environment of love and support. And so that'd be my thing. That'd be my thing to adoptive parents and parents looking is, you're going to make mistakes, but don't let it stop you from being an amazing parent.
What's one thing you wish every adoptive parent knew before they brought their child home?
Set up a college fund and let that just sit there in a money market account and let it just gain interest. So when their child goes to college, you'll have a good fund.
I love it. Describe adoption in 3 words.
Love, fear, compassion.
Adoption is not just a destination. It's a journey filled with love, resilience, and growth. Wherever you are on this roadmap, trust in your path, stay open to learning, and always lead with your heart. You already have everything you need to create a beautiful story for your family. And when the road takes unexpected detours, I'm here to help you navigate every turn along the adoption roadmap. Thank you so much, Wilson.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.